to another edition of the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. I am Ray Russell, and this week we continue to answer your questions. Listener questions is the topic again this week. Coming back from a week hiatus. Could have used a high-ninus, but that's another story for another day. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring back on the man with the plan himself, the one and only Mr. Bob Roop. Welcome back to the Wrestling Stoop.
It's good to be back, Ray, with you and our listeners out there. Even if you can't see your audience, you can imagine. I can imagine all of you out there. I hope there's more than 3 or 4. It'd be nice if there were several 100,000. But whatever it is, be it one person. Hello, and I hope you're well.
Oh, there's more than one person out there. I can tell you that much, Bob. Yeah, it's been a nice week off. I made a little joke there at the top of the program. We took a little hiatus. I could have used a high-ninus. Lots going on in my world right now. But we still got to get this in because it's always a good time to stop by the Wrestling Stoop and have a fun little conversation. And right now, as we get everything situated with these global videos and kind of figure out how we're going to go about that and discussing some of the things a little deeper and some of the characters and some of the stories and stuff and whatnot, and other things as well we have planned. Right now, we're going to continue to answer some questions from the listeners out there, and they continue to send them in. And I wanted to kick off this week. I don't typically do it this way. Usually I try to go in order, or at least roughly in order of the way the questions are sent in to us, but this was actually the last question I received. It came in this week, but it was so unusual I had to bring it up at the top of the program because I'm not sure if there's any merit to it, so I kind of want to dismiss it right out of the gate if that is the case.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to get rolling. From Eric Dawson sent in a DM to me on Facebook. He wrote, and there's a couple of messages he sent me here, so just bear with me. He said, Mr. Russell, have you ever asked Mr. Roop? Oh, very proper of you, Mr. Dawson. Did you ever ask Bob about a match with Mil Mascaras that turned shoot? And I responded to him. I said, are you referencing Bob versus Mil Mascaras that turned shoot? And I said, I had never heard of such a thing. You would think that would be big time folklore by now in the wrestling world had that happen. And so I kind of played it down like, I don't think that happened. Are you positive it was between Bob and Mil Mascaras in the Florida territories where he's referencing? And his response was, yes, it was a story on the Kayfabe Memories message board from years ago. Now, Bob, I don't know if you're familiar with the Kayfabe board, but it came out at the end of the 90s, well into the 2000s, just thousands and thousands of posts of wrestling history and knowledge in there to read through. But he says the story went that it was on a TV taping in Florida, and it was a dressing room run-out pull-apart, which also made me think that they did it so well that a lot of people got worked. I have never heard any encounter between you and Mil Mascaras, shoot, work, or otherwise. And the only time we've talked about Mil on here is really that tour of Japan where you said he kind of just was quiet and sat at the back of the bus by himself more often than not. So
Right.
I got to ask you, were you involved in any kind of a weird angle or shoot or anything with Mil or somebody you remember or anything of that nature in Florida?
No, but with a codicil, with a butt. I'm trying to think about the possibility of a pull apart where, because he was a babyface and I was a heel, and we're all out there maybe pulling people apart, that he and I might have had like bumped into each other and had a face off, and he had to pretend, like he hated my guts and vice versa. But I don't recall that. I may have worked with the guy in a match. I don't remember it, though. I know who he was. He was a very, very big star.
Yes.
Mean, he was a money maker. He made movies, all kinds of things. But again, he was very, very quiet to the point of almost being reclusive, like Howard Hughes. And I've been on a Japanese tour with him. I didn't get to know him one bit, not one little thing, not one personal item, nothing about him. I didn't where he was from, how old he was, what his real name was, nothing. So no, I remember every non-working thing that ever happened in the ring.
I would imagine.
Because there were so few of them. Most people, 99% of the boys, we were all actors, but 99% of them, if you had to do it for real, well, the pro moves you can't do for, most of them you can't do for real. Like the abdominal stretch, you can't do that. That's a move for on the mat. It's called a guillotine.
Yeah.
And it's a vicious move, but you can't do it standing up. I mean, because the person who's being held can push you over or you both fall down. Will be the one way they'd be trying to get away. But anyway, no, I don't think even getting punched by Mil Mascaras would be something I could talk about.
Right.
But no, do I sound like a fan? I don't mean it that way. He was terrific at his thing. I didn't particularly care for his thing. I hated wearing masks. Oh, I hate it. I'm claustrophobic.
Which you've done repeatedly throughout your career, however. But it was for gimmick purposes and angle purposes and things of that. Right, I get it. Now, I'm just curious. I had never heard anything, and I just felt like this would be something that would have came out a long time. People love to make up and enhance the stories of you and Dick Slater or you and Blackjack Mulligan, and we talked about, some of the other things that you got into yourself in life, and even that lady out there on the West Coast you had to take down and kind of subdue at one point in that hotel, in her apartment. So we told some stories. Exactly. Self-defense, people. Plus, I think the statute of limitation is passed on that, but that's okay. But I mean, you go back and you can remember things like that. I would think you would remember a shoot in the ring with Mil Mascaras, and it just blew my mind. Cool. So I did a little digging before we went on the air, and I couldn't find anything. And I'm not saying it's not on the kayfabe board. And the kayfabe board did go down at one point many years ago, so maybe it was on the original, for all I know. But I can't find anything on it personally. So if one of the loyal Florida historians, the super fans of the era, a Howard Baum, a Barry Rose, someone like that can, trigger some memories for us here on the show and say, hey, there was this time this happened or that happened. I would love for them to, send in the message and let us know, but I'm not seeing it anywhere. And of course, this listener he sent this in based on something he had read. So maybe it was something he did not encounter himself either. But it sounds to me like it was a no-go, apparently, here. But I wanted to clear that up because it really caught my attention, and he just happened to send it at the perfect time because, I was getting ready to put together the show. So it's sticking out in my head right now, and I wanted to get that in at the top of the program because I felt like there probably wasn't a whole lot there, but at the same time, I still wanted to get that in. And make sure we discuss that. Should it have been a thing, it was going to be the big thing this week on the show, no doubt about it. Because Mil Mascaras, you're an Olympian, Bob, of course, Olympian wrestler. But Mil Mascaras had a hell of a background himself. I mean, I hadn't realized because I had seen later Mil when he just kind of did a couple of running headbutts and things like that and jumped off top, beautiful cross-body block, things like that. But, recently getting to go back to the early 70s and watch Mil work several matches with Dick Beyer, the Destroyer, over in Japan, I quickly found out that Mil was a shooter. I mean, he wasn't shooting on Dick. That would be a stupid thing to do. But the way they were working with each other, you could see, wait a minute, there's way more to this lucha guy than just lucha libre flying. I mean, this guy had some sort of a background, and he could stretch you if he needed to, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not saying he would have stretched you, but I'm saying that would have been something for the ages. As legendary as Mil Mascaras is as a figure in Mexico, around the world, Japan, of course, the United States, selling out Los Angeles, the New York territory. He worked up there quite a bit, all over the magazines throughout the 70s into the early 80s. So Mil was a huge deal, and you were giant in Florida, one of the top heels in Florida. So I think that would have just made bigger headlines than a random post on the kayfabe board. So hopefully if anybody can, continue to expound upon that and get back to us, I'd love to hear that. But I don't want to spend too much time on it since it didn't happen.
Right. Well, there's another factor that even if Mil had a background in amateur wrestling, if we got into a beef, it wouldn't be amateur wrestling, it would be hooking. Because, amateur wrestling, you leave yourself wide open. You lead with your head and go on to grab a guy's leg. You're asking to get kneed in the face, poked in the eye. You're putting your eyes, your ears, your head, your hair and everything right in front of a guy, right in front of both his knees and his feet. What are you, crazy? You're going to try to take a guy down and shoot? No. I would always prefer to start with the baseball bat to the back of the head of the other guy and start that way and then go from there. Usually, there's not that much. If you get up,
then we'll figure out what we're doing next. Exactly.
Well, if they get up, I'm on my way. I'm going to make sure I've got.
I can hear Andre right now. What did you do to me, boss?
Yeah. Oh, man. I was just just parting your hair there, Andre.
You had a cowlick going, Andre. I was just helping you out there.
Yeah. But no, Mil Mascaras and I never. I don't remember actually ever touching the guy, quite frankly.
That would have been a hell of a fun story, though, if you had. One to tell for the ages, certainly, between your background and amateur, and Mil clearly learning some kind of shoot holds at some point. Plus, he had studied all sorts of martial arts. And Mil, you talked about when you were getting in there and doing all these little deals where these challenges with the fans and things like that, kind of going and maybe learning a little martial arts yourself and training to prepare for some of these people. That's what Mil did because he was such a big star, and he knew that there were a lot of people who resented him because he was like an Andre. He was a touring attraction for the most part. He wouldn't stay anywhere too long. And so he realized there were people that perhaps might, take advantage of him or attempt to. And so he went and he studied like judo, jujitsu, karate. So Mil had all of that in his backyard too, because much like you, for a different reason though, he knew that, get in there with the wrong guy on the wrong day and, they want to be an asshole. I got to be ready for him. Kind of like you did with these, these clowns that were coming in from the crowd trying to break the sugar hold or whatever the case may be, depending on the territory you were in and what you were instructed to go out there and do.
Let me add, I can see him doing that, and I can see him, what I said earlier about learning hooks to defend myself from them.
Yes.
That's why I wanted to learn them.
Absolutely.
I mean, if I had to front face like some guy who was lost his mind or something, I was trying to keep him like down on the mat, I would do it, but otherwise I wasn't going to be shooting with anybody. But I wanted to learn how to protect myself against all these hooks, so I learned as many as I could. Mr. Mascaras might have been learning all these things to defend against people who say were judo experts or were karate people or were kickboxers. And maybe he was learning all that so that he could defend himself against anything because, we're talking about it now. If you were, say you were a typical fan of Lucha Libre and you ran and smacked Mil Mascaras, even if you got your butt kicked, you go down, they'd still be talking about you. Oh, yeah, it's the guy that hit them. So he had to, well, what a life that guy had. I mean, he had to hide all the time. So I don't remember if he took the mask off on the bus when we'd be traveling. I don't think he did. I'm sure he didn't. Well, I'm fairly sure he did in his hotel room.
I know he was very, very protective of the mask. My understanding is that I think, it was very rare to have him, he would have it off at, and he would typically arrive to the arena and leave the arena with the mask on.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That was his whole deal. I mean, that was his gimmick. You couldn't really afford to just, be caught, cover blown or whatnot either. I mean, that's your whole shtick, right? Especially for Mil, who was such a high profile wrestler under the mask. It wasn't just like you were working as an executioner, at the end of the night, you could take the mask off and go out or what have you, a blue Yankee or whatever it would be down in Memphis and things they use.
One last add on. I did see him without the mask. He was a very handsome guy.
Okay.
Now, I think about other people that wore a mask. Two of them that I really, truly respect are Dick Byers and Johnny Weaver, or Walker. Yeah, Wrestling Stoop. Now, those guys needed a mask.
Yeah,
well. I mean, to create that mystique.
Yes.
Because Johnny, especially Walker, was a great worker. But he had, he didn't have anywhere near movie star looks. He looked like he could be somebody's uncle on Lassie.
He was cosmetically challenged for his age, is what we can
very nicely put. And so the mask created that mystery. Mil didn't need a mask. He was very handsome from what I saw.
right.
movie star type handsome. So anyway, onward and upward.
Absolutely. So we've been sitting on this question for quite a while because I was going through all the wrestling questions and putting some of the non-wrestling questions in the back. But it's been sitting here long enough, and we've had a listener that's been here probably since the beginning by the name of William Jett. So I wanted to get this question in for him.
Okay.
He said, do you have any stories from your time in the Army? Did you have to jump out of the plane while doing your paratrooper training? I would imagine part of paratrooper training would be jumping out of a plane, but I really don't know. I wasn't in the armed forces, but I got to ask you, for William, did you ever jump out of a plane during your paratrooper training? And do you have any fun stories of your time in the Army?
5 jumps were required for the school. The first week, we put on harnesses, and we went to a tower that was maybe 30 feet high, put on harnesses, and slid down like the parachute harness.
Like the zip line deal?
Yeah, the zip line where and then the second week the second week I think the second week they had a tower that they could attach a parachute to and stretch it out. It would be limp. And then they would lift the tower and you would be attached, of course, to the parachute. So it would lift you up, I think, about 180 feet. And then it would release the parachute. And the parachute would take a second, but it would, that would inflate. And then, so you got a chance to practice your landing, your parachute landing fall. And I think the third week we were doing a jump every day. The first jump was, very nerve-wracking, and I was floating down. Being heavy, I was big for a paratrooper. Average weight was probably 160 pounds. I weighed about 210. Light for me, but big for, was told by everybody all the way up to almost after I was into school, you're too big, you're never going to make it. But anyway, I was there, and so anyway, we're doing this first jump, and one of the things we were cautioned about was make sure not to get too close to another parachutist, because one of the things that can happen is your chute and his chute can get entangled and pulled up and take the air out of both of them, and you plunge to your death. So I'm going down. I noticed, like say, 30 or 40 feet away, there's this guy, big guy like me, same level, who's coming down, and we're kind of gliding toward each other. Like the wind is blowing or whatever. We're getting closer to this. So I grabbed one of I think they're called risers. They're a strap that you can steer with. If you steer with your left, you'll pull your chute to the left. And vice versa. I steered to the left, well, he steered to his right, and we kept getting closer. So I started screaming at him, and I think I started out with SOB, and then it escalated from there. So then I grabbed the other riser to compensate, and he did the same thing. By now, our chutes are only about 10 feet apart. We are screaming the most horrible curses at each other because most of us were terrified. He was a Hispanic guy, and he was doing most of his in Spanish. Mine was clearly American. You could probably hear me a mile away. Like, anyway, just the most horrible, insulting language. If you said it to somebody in a bar, a fight is guaranteed. Well, anyway, we get separated. We land, quite some distance apart. I actually looked around for the guy. We had to bundle up our chute and put it in and it had a container that you could put it in. And then you went to a truck where you got in a truck and they took us back to our barracks. Mm-hmm. Well, I get everything. I'm looking around for the guy. And I'm telling you, he said some horrible, I made up new curse words that maybe it heard on Venus or someplace. But I get on the truck and I sit down. The truck will hold 12 people. I sit down and I look up, and sitting directly across from me is the guy. And we looked at each other, and thank God he smiled. We both started laughing at how ridiculous we were for about 3 seconds. We were both so terrified. We probably got out 500 swear words in 3 seconds, each of us. That to me is a funny story.
So my deal in life is heights. I'm not a big fan of heights. I love roller coasters, so that's kind of weird, I guess. But outside of that, I'm not a giant fan of heights and things of that nature. It doesn't really bother me to be on a plane, but jumping out of one, completely different situation. I don't know that I want to be put in that situation unless I absolutely have to. So better you than me, Bob.
Thank you, Ray. Let me tell you another one. It's irony at its best.
Sure.
As paratroopers, the way you could distinguish us, we could wear our army pants. We could tuck them into the top of our boots, so that and we could wear our combat boots with our dress uniform. Whereas if you weren't a paratrooper, you had to wear like a flat shoe, a regular shoe. We always called the non-paratroopers, we called them legs, because they had to walk while we flew. We flew and jumped. So I got stationed in Alaska, and up there, when we went out on bivouac, they didn't have any paratrooper stuff going. They didn't drop us. Even when we spent a week on a glacier one time, but we went in by helicopter. There wasn't any parachute jumping going on up there. What the paradox was that when we went out on bivouac, it might be like a 20-mile distance where we were going. Everybody else got to ride in a truck, but because we were the airborne, we were the tough guys, we had to walk. And I find that hilarious because, and I was the medic, so I was the very last guy on maybe a 2-mile mob line. Everybody else had arrived and put up their tents and were roasting marshmallows by the time we got there. I found that funny. The guys that are supposed to, be riding on a plane.
I would have personally, as a medic, I would have walked in and said, "Hey, I might be the guy that saves your life. You might want to think about that. Might want to share one of the marshmallows with me, bud."
Well, it worked. Being a medic worked out. I got picked while I was in Alaska. I got picked to be the medic at the military ski resort. That was my duty. I didn't have to go to line up in the morning to salute the flag. I could eat anytime I wanted to.
Well,
and I didn't go to work till about 1:00, and I got back at midnight. Oh, my sergeant, the sergeant that I was assigned to, I'd already been gone for about 7 months to go down and train to try out for. This was 1964. I'd already been gone long enough to go down and try out for the Olympics. That's where I met Jim Raschke, Baron von Raschke.
Right.
I was already gone 6 months. So when I came back, he said, you got another 6-8 months left in the service, and you're going to be working now. Because what happened is he had a roster of 40 guys. I was one of them. But I was TDY, I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but I wasn't there. So he had to do 39 men had to absorb my part of the work. So he had been short for like 6 months. Well, that affects efficiency and, a bunch of things. It makes it harder for him.
Right.
So, and he wasn't a horrible guy. He was a pretty nice guy, but he said, he was pretty stiff. I think he was one of the first guys I ever heard say, and this was back in the 1960s, I may chew and smoke dope, but I don't play. I think he said something like that, which is so corny now, but he said it to us as an introduction when he first came in. But when I got back from 6 months, what he thought was bad duty, he sent me up as the medic. They were taking half the company up on this glacier to teach them how to cross-country ski. Because, if you have a war in Alaska, this is back in the 60s, 1960s. No, not 1860s. But,
wow, you're really dating yourself now, Bob, showing your age.
If you're going to get around, it was by cross-country ski because like motorized ski-doos and all that didn't always work. Plus, they were too loud. Our outfits were white. Our skis were white. We were meant to be camouflaged all the time in the snow. So anyway, I get back from the Olympic trials. I've been gone 6 months. My sergeant's going to work my butt off. Before he's going to have me work down at the motor pool changing oil or something in cars. There wasn't much work for medics up there. Anyway, so he assigned me as what he thought was punishment was to be the medic up for a week up on this glacier, and I slept in a tent with a radio man. We could tune in Tokyo on our GI radio, so we're out there in the middle of nowhere, a glacier that's 50 miles wide, And that was supposed to be punishment. Well, one of the reasons I got picked to be a medic was because I could ski. I was on a cross country ski team. That was another way to get out of regular duty, by the way.
Sure. Oh.
And yeah, so I was picked to be the medic for. Well, what happened was we were helicoptered in, and we were supposed to be helicoptered out. But what happened was we were running out of food, and the weather wasn't cooperating. The overcast was too low to make it safe for helicopters to come in and get us. So, as part of our training, they decided we're going to cross-country ski out of there. Well, now that's no problem when you're in the middle of a solid glacier. But when you get down to the edges, you get these things called crevasses, which are like great big gaps in the earth that if you fall into, you might fall 100 feet before you hit anything, and then it's going to be ice. And sometimes they're covered by snow. You can't even see them. So it's dangerous, in other words.
Right.
Well, being the medic, I was at the rear, bringing up the rear, and we had a guy with us. We had a guy get hurt. So we had a thing called an akiak. If you took a canoe and took about 6 inches off the top of it, what would be left is like a sled. It had a couple runners on it, but you could fit a body on it. You could fit a regular sized person on it, strap them in, and you could ski. They were, it had runners on it, so you could tow them. And of course, you had to have a guy behind as a brake man. So if you're going downhill, you got to be able to stop.
Sure.
Yeah, have the guy skiing. You drop. Imagine you're already strapped in. You drop into a crevasse. Oh my God. Well, anyway, I was the brake man. And I didn't even know the sergeant who was in charge of, who was the one up front. There were 2 guys pulling, and I was the brake guy. And I didn't even know this one sergeant who was doing one of the pullers. But when we finally it took us all day to get out there, and it was dangerous as hell. Well, we all shook hands. I don't remember. I was a PFC or a corporal. He was a master sergeant or something. Gray-haired man, much older than me and everything. Well, it turned out that the very next week, they put him in charge of the military ski resort, which is a recreational thing. It's not for any kind of training. It's for, to go up there and go skiing for the military people. So when the sergeant the sergeant who now is in charge of staffing this ski lodge, when he starts thinking of a medic, who do you think he thinks of? He knows one real personally who can ski. So he picked me. I came in, this was the day after getting back from the glacier, which was started a day after getting back from 6 months being gone. And I went in my sergeant's office. He didn't even get up from his desk. He just threw a bunch of papers at me. And he said, you F me again. And what it was orders. That sergeant had ordered me, had asked for me to be the medic up at the ski resort, which means my sergeant wasn't in charge of me anymore. I belonged to this other guy. Oh. I still lived there. I had a roommate because we were both like corporals, and the sergeant would come in an inspection in the morning. I'm talking about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And my roommate had to be up, standing there, his bed made up, his dress, shoes on, and all that. I could lay in bed and pretend I was asleep. Oh, I could feel my sergeant. I mean, I was in the same room, about 5 feet away. I could feel my sergeant. I could feel it burning. I mean, my blankets almost caught on fire. But that's a funny story to me about coincidence. And then when the ski season ended, Sergeant Victory was his name. I don't know I doubt if he's still with us, but Sergeant Victory, if you're out there, when the ski thing got over, he said, you got 3.5 months left. I said, I got you now. And there was this deal that if you were going to go to college directly from the service, you could get a 3 months early out. About an hour after my sergeant said, "Well, I've got you now," my roommate, who worked up in the bureaucratic, the red tape office with the papers and all that, came running and he said, "Hey, your application to try out for the early for college was approved." He said, "You're leaving in 3 days."
Wow. That worked out.
I couldn't resist. I went and knocked on Sergeant Dick Victory's door, and he said, "What?" I opened it up. He looked at me and said, I know, get the F out of here."
Well.
Anyway, I thought it was funny.
No, that's good stuff. And I mean, everything seemed to work out in your favor for the most part while you were, you found your way through. It's basically, it's fun times, definitely. To be stuck in Alaska, I mean, at least you figured out a good way to do it. And I guess that cross-country skiing deal really worked out for you in the long run. Since you just happened to get placed in Alaska of all places. That probably didn't work out so much for a lot of the otber boys down there or up there.
Yeah, well, I decided I had a 3-year enlistment, and from being a screw up, I didn't sign up for the draft when I should have. I procrastinated. So when I wanted to go in the service, I couldn't enlist as a guy who had been registered in the draft. I would have only done 2 years because I was obligated for 3. Well, but I needed to be able to. Some needs of support. So, and I figured I'd learn. Well, I knew within, before you take the oath that you're going to join, you're sir, and everybody's real nice to you. As soon as you say "I do," all of a sudden they all turn into Count Dracula.
The honeymoon is over.
Yeah, yes. Over. Yeah. So, but of that time, I spent 14 months training to be a special forces medic. And that was great training. We had doctors. We went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas. So doctors were our instructors. And I learned how to do amputations, appendectomies, tracheotomies, debridement of gunshot wounds, setting broken bones, and tropical diseases, because the war was in, Southeast Asia. And I did get the training. Now, I didn't get a Green Beret. I had 6 months. I had the amount of training I had left. I had to have a year after that left in the service in order to do it. Well, I only had 9 months left, so I went before a board. So I said, "Well, if you won't, this is a volunteer. I volunteered for this. If you're not going to send me on a mission, then I'm going to resign. I'm going to basically resign from." It was a shitty thing to do on my part, really. But I knew I was going back to college. I already had a scholarship offer. Mm-hmm. So when I opted to get out, I had to go for a board of officers, and this one colonel, he said he said, "Well, I think the real reason that you want out is that you're a coward." And I said, "Respectfully, sir," and there were four or five other officers there. I said, "Respectfully, sir, if you or any or all of you would like to meet me back behind the barracks tonight, I'll be there." And I was I was an E2. I'm talking to a colonel. I think they were slightly pissed off. I told them I would fight them if you think you think I'm a coward.
From my understanding, that's not the best thing to do. But
why do you think I got sent to Alaska?
Well, there you go. That makes sense. The joke was on them to a degree anyway, so I guess.
What's the worst thing we can do to this smart ass?
Yeah, there you go.
Two-striper who comes in here and challenges us to fight. Where can we send him? I mean, is there some garbage dump somewhere? And okay, let's. You know what?
Hopefully he skis right into an oil spill. That's what they're...
He says, yeah, well, you know what? They don't even let paratroopers jump in Alaska. Let's send them to Alaska. So that's what they did.
Wow, tremendous. I love it. Unbelievable. Yeah. Well, that was fun. I'm glad we finally got that in. I've been sitting on that question for a long time. I just pulled up the questions here and I go, oh my goodness. I apologize for taking so long to get to that, but try to go through the wrestling questions as often as we can here because that's what the people are really here for. But that was some fun stories. It's been a while since we went back into the world of young Bob Roop and talked about some of the things you were doing before the wrestling business. And this was all pre-wrestling, guys, by the way. So just some fun stuff to think about there. Bob comes back and he goes, maybe this fake wrestling shit ain't all too bad then, maybe. Who knows?
Let's look into this for a second, Ray.
Okay.
The backgrounds of wrestlers, very few people like Danny Hodge, for example, had a really extraordinary, different background than I did. I mean, completely different.
Right.
And I think that and yet if you were talking to us together, you really wouldn't have any idea. We both went to college and both were in the service and, and both were in the Olympics and all that. So you wouldn't maybe be able to tell the difference. But there's a vast difference in the way that you're brought up as to what your values are. Mm-hmm. And, if we're talking about what our listeners, our fans, or people who take the time to listen to us, we're trying to let them see behind the scenes. Well, what about behind the scenes of who the wrestling character really is? What kind of person is he? What are his values? And, now a lot of guys, I wouldn't violate people's privacy certainly with no negative stories. Danny Danny grew up really rough. And he had a really rough time, and I didn't. I was very fortunate to have a secure family and brothers and sisters that we were a nuclear family, and so anyway, I'm saying all that because I hope not to lose listeners by it, but I think getting to know me a little bit might make the stories I'm telling more relevant. Because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but let's go directly to
those were fun. No, those were fun little stories there in your time in the Army. But we will go back to the wrestling for those here for the wrestling. Carl Turner sent in a quick question here, and he says, your thoughts or memories on the big one-man gang. Of course, he was Crusher Broomfield in the ICW there for Angelo Poffo, and later he would become the one-man gang debut there for Bill Watts in the early part of 1982 Mid-South. And so I know you crossed paths with him on more than one occasion between Poffo and then later on in Bill Watts land as well. Do you remember anything about what you thought about the gang? 6'9", 6'10", nearly 500 pounds, and he could bump for a guy that size. He could move.
Yeah, I saw him when they first, I don't know if the Poffos discovered him and saw this great big guy. I don't know if they had a school. I'm not sure how he got there.
We just covered that just last week. We were recording. We're in the middle of doing deep research into the ICW. Me and Steve Crawford on the Territory podcast, Regional Wrestling, and we got into the discussion of how the gang was discovered. He apparently had been working some outlaw shows, some really low independent level shows in the Carolinas. He was a Carolina boy. And he traveled over with a underneath guy by the name of Chief J Eagle to an ICW show. And I guess Randy and probably Angelo kind of took a look at him, looked up at him and said, what do we got here? So that's kind of how he was discovered. And he started off working for Angelo as George the Giant. His real name's George Gray. But they quickly pivoted to Crusher Broomfield. But yeah, we'll go back to your memories on the gang.
Well, I'm not sure exactly how it transpired, but I ended up staying with, or at least spending a lot of time when I was working for the Poffos. My future wife Molly I was paying. Oh, she was working too, so she was paying too. Had an apartment in Knoxville, so I couldn't afford. Didn't need to get a living area that I had to pay for in Lexington, where ICW was based. So I remember staying with Ronnie Garvin for a few days and Bob Orton Jr. maybe. But there was a referee there, and I'm really sorry I can't remember his name. He was redheaded, a nice guy. but he had an apartment, and I was staying with him, and Crusher was too. And he was, you talk about Mil Mascaras being quiet. He's got a competitor there with Crusher. I think I had books I would always read, or if I was there, because we didn't have shows every night. We had a lot of nights off, and so I was always reading. But he watched, and I don't think it was all porn, but I think it was soft porn. It wasn't anything. I mean, it wasn't anything perv or anything. Well, I mean, we're talking about, what are we talking about? 1980. So, times were different. They didn't, women would tease, they would act like they were going to take their bra off and, to take 5 minutes to end up never doing it. But anyway, watching that kind of stuff and never saying that, I don't remember one conversation with it. Now, fast forward to, 5 years ago, a gentleman had asked me at, I believe it was maybe CAC. I think it was in Vegas. He asked me to do a benefit because he knew I lived in Michigan. He lived in Indiana. He asked if I would do a benefit on the. He also knew about my special ed credentials, so he asked if I would do a benefit appearance somewhere in Indiana. So I said that I said that I would. So later, the drive was okay, except going home. I had to drive home in the dark, and when you're older, you don't see that well. You don't see as well in the dark. I was on backcountry roads. Anyway, the gang was there, as well as Bill Eady, and what was his partner's name?
Barry Darso?
Yeah, I think that's where I first maybe met Darso, where I had any time at all to talk to him. Yeah, those guys were there, and almost nobody showed up for this benefit. I hope he was making some money somewhere. He didn't have to pay me. I mean, I volunteered my time. But I'm sure that those other guys, I know he had to be paying them something. They did a deal where we sat up in front of, I don't know, maybe there were 30 people there, and they asked questions, and, we answered the questions. But the Silento that sat on the chair and watched porn all day was now a fully developed, gregarious, funny.
Very gregarious. Very funny.
Yes. Humorous, charming person, and nice. I mean, I hadn't seen him, and I didn't know him then. Even we sat within 10 feet of each other for a couple of weeks. We might have spoken 2 or 3 words to each other. I mean, if some guy's making it real clear he don't want to talk to you, he won't even look in your direction. I could take that pretty well. But anyway, it was great seeing him that way. I was able to congratulate him on having done very well, and he looked good. His face had all those upward tilts to it rather than the downward tilts.
Right.
Yeah.
The smile lines is what he had. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you look at people, you can see the people whose lips end up down near their bottom of their chin. Yeah. You might not want to go up and ask you, hey, how's it going?
Not the most fun people to hang out with, for sure. Yeah.
Body language and appearance can tell you a lot. And I tell people that. I say, you enjoy your work here, don't you? And they said, well, yeah. I said, yeah, well. I said, look, it shows it. I know you've been here a while because I've been seeing you. Obviously, you've been smiling a lot because you don't have you don't have that frowny face. So I'm happy for you. Anyway.
I don't know how much you would have crossed paths with the gang later on. I guess not a whole lot, very much anyway. But, early on, like you say, you were part of the ICW organization when he is basically found and given a gimmick of Crusher Broomfield. I'm not really sure where that name comes from, but he even relives the Canadian Bumblebee gimmick, a la Crusher Blackwell from several. And I guess the Crusher does come from the Blackwell gimmick as well, I would have to imagine. So it's almost like a reinventing of Crusher Blackwell in many ways. And Blackwell was nimble on his feet. And I don't know if the gang was as nimble as Blackwell was throwing drop kicks and things, but he was still really good. Great bumper for a guy that size. Unfortunately, I saw him last year at the Barry Rose. They had that GrappleCon, in Orlando. He was having more fun than the fans were, just greeting everybody, talking to everybody, having a great time, just a happy guy. And that was great to see. And then Mark Lawrence, who was a longtime announcer for the World Class Territory down in Dallas, he was part of that show as well. And I don't know how many times he said, there's nobody having more fun here than the gang. And Mark was getting off and watching the gang just smile and greet everybody and just having a blast and stuff. So I'm glad, he got to be recognized by so many fans. And he was so shocked. Like, he kind of came to me at one point, and he goes to me and he's like, I can't believe all these people want to sit here and talk to me about wrestling. It's like full circle, basically. Like, he gave the business because he was a fan. Now the fans are coming and giving to him, so to speak. So that was really cool to get to, talk with him for a little bit. And he does seem like a great guy. And unfortunately, he's got some ailments, but all of you guys have some sort of an ailment, I have to imagine, for your years in the ring, especially when you're that size of a man. I mean, not just clearly around 500 pounds at his peak, but again, the guy was pushing 7 feet tall on top of it, just a mountain of a man.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure. I know he's intelligent enough. I mean, I've been taking cholesterol and blood pressure medication for 30 years. It never was ever got to a stage where it was dangerous because I didn't let it.
Yeah.
When my doctor, I was always taking. My dad died of cancer, and they didn't find it until 2 days before he was gone. And I had a grandmother who was she had what's it called when you think you're sick all the time. So I think I inherited some of that too. But if I have anything that I'm getting a physical. I told you earlier in our program today, I told you about that 14 months of training and being trained by doctors 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So I learned a lot. I mean, I forgot a lot too, but I did some things in college. I had a guy reset his ankle. It was broken. I reset it while it was still numb. He'd just been hit by a car. But anyway, I had use for it in my own life as far as taking care of my own health. And so I'm edging on high blood pressure. What's a safe medication that's been proven over at least 25, 30 years of testing that it's safe. And I had a very good doctor, and I knew he was. Yeah, I started long ago, so people say you have a high blood pressure. I would have high blood pressure, yes, if I didn't take medication, but I don't. Anyway, we got way off the bat. As far as a one-man gang, I'm grateful that he gets to go to those get-togethers where people tell him what he meant to them.
Right.
I've had a few that I've gotten to, I've had the privilege to go to, and it has nothing to do with big egos. It has to do with being paid back the tremendous costs that was paid to get the kind of attention that you're getting from this person.
Right.
The millions of miles, the sprains, the always aching, the missed birthdays, the missed anniversaries, the missed Christmases and New Year's, and all the graduations of your kids, all the things you missed. It's payback. Just for a few hours, maybe, or a couple of days. It's payback for some of that. And
sure,
that's very rewarding, because obviously, you know what, one thing it does tell you, your work was successful. The sacrifice you made was, whether it was a wise one or not, was successful. You became well known. You became famous. Some people are obsessed with it. Now, if you had to do that every day, it would be too much. If you had to do that if that was your job, say, every day to be talking to people, even if they were admiring you and wanting autographs and all that, that's about a week. Familiarity really does breed contempt. So, like after a week, you would be tired of it. Say, look, I got to have some privacy. Anybody got one of a space helmet or something? I don't know why I put philosophizing today, but
that's quite all right.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell back to talk to you about all the new and exciting audio and video podcasts we've been putting together over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. As a self-funded brand, this entire ship is powered by our patrons. It's your support that keeps all of these wonderful shows going here at WrestleCopia. And with that said, I wanted to mention that we now have 3 major tiers with tons of Patreon-exclusive next-level content for our Patreon supporters. And it all starts with the $5 all-access tier, which gets you early access to many of the weekly podcasts, at least a dozen monthly digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure, the insanely detailed show notes for the Wrestling Memory Grenade Regional Wrestling, and the OG Monday Warfare podcast, plus random bonus video drops, archived old-school audio watch-alongs from the early years of the brand. And if that's not all, the brand new Patreon-exclusive podcast, Ranting Raw, featuring yours truly, Ray Russell, completely uncensored, unfiltered, with honest takes, taking patron questions and addressing various topics from throughout wrestling history. It is a whole lot of fun wrapped under the all-access tier for only $5, but things get even hotter with the VIP Superfan tier. For just a few dollars more, you get everything already mentioned in the all-access tier, plus as part of the VIP tier, a whole new slew of videocast series where it's not just your typical watch-alongs. Sure, we laugh, we have fun, but we're also breaking down the history, the context, and the why behind what you're seeing. And as part of the VIP tier, you have access to Dan Gennety's Puro Resu Academy videocast, the Coliseum videocast with co-host Gene Jackson, and the Monday Warfare videocast, Raw vs. Nitro, breaking down the history of the Monday Night War. Plus, you also get the Memphis 1985 folder of goodies and all show notes for the Puro Academy podcast and Gene's retro review show. Lots to be had there at the VIP tier. But wait, there's more. For those WrestleCopia backers who crave even more from the brand, we bring you yet another level of content fit for a warrior, because it is indeed the ultimate tier, which gives you everything from the all-access pass, everything from the VIP tier, plus you will receive access to the big ones video series featuring a lengthy look and discussion into some of the biggest pay-per-views, super shows, and other events from throughout wrestling history. It's also a great place to keep up with the big events that coincide with the Monday Warfare videocast and so many other big events from years gone by. You'll also have access to the newest big hit to the Copia brand. I'm talking about Regional Wrestling Unreal, the video series. Get ready for the next level in regional wrestling as we dissect territory history in video form. Watch along with us. But still, even more for your money, guys. You'll also receive access to the Treasure Chest, which offers patrons the unique opportunity to download and watch select rarities from wrestling history. And for those of you who are wondering what we offer, are contemplating joining a paid Patreon membership, or simply a curious lurker, a reminder there's a free tier at our Patreon that you can join as well. Remember, guys, no subscription, cancel any time, but I think you'll like the content that we're offering there for any budget you may have. And you can sign up right now, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, or look for the QR code where available. We appreciate your support in helping us pay the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network running and enabling us to continue to bring you all the quality programming that we offer.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Got more questions, so we'll be all right. We're going to Jerry Monroe, who asks, and I guess he's basing this off of our recent show we recorded. It's in my Patreon right now. People can listen to it early access. It hasn't come out yet on the free podcast version, but I did an episode, again, with Steve Crawford going back to the ICW, and we were discussing some of the venues, some of the cities that you guys worked there in Kentucky with the Paphos and whatnot. And
Right.
There's a fun story, and I got to thank Steve Crawford again for putting this together because he did the research on this particular subject. Back in January of 1980, it says ICW debuts in Manchester, Kentucky. And he's got some quotes here for some of the wrestlers. I don't know if you remember Manchester well, but I'm going to read a couple quotes here about Manchester, Kentucky real quick. George Weingroff said, "When you come into Manchester, there's a sign that says, 'Welcome to Manchester,' and it's full of bullet holes." Rip Rogers said, "The most exciting venue was Ernie Couch's Entertainment Center. He built a quote-unquote arena on his property that held about 500 people. Ernie was always there. He really wasn't smart to the business. He always had a gun in hand. It was like he was threatening to shoot the heels all of the time. Do you remember Ernie Couch? Do you remember Manchester, Kentucky? I got to ask you."
Oh, God, I wish I did, but no.
I love George Weingroff's description. "Welcome to Manchester" sign, and it's full of bullet holes.
Yeah, I would remember now. There was one weird place. It was a store or something where you go in and there was a bunch of weird stuff. I don't think it was the same thing, though.
It sounds like this guy just raised a barn, basically, on his property. He's like, "Why ain't there no wrestling in Manchester?" Well, we don't have an arena, and this guy goes and builds a fucking barn so that there can be wrestling in Manchester, Kentucky. Now, there's a wrestling hero right there, Bob. If you build it, they will come.
Well, that's a good philosophy in that case. And I don't know how he did, but probably, I guess it would depend on who he booked. But yeah, it shows initiative anyway.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know if he passed any zone laws to get that done or anything like that. I don't know if he was paying the government their portion of the proceeds, but I don't know how much he was getting for it either. He might have been, Angelo might have worked this guy. You tell you what, you can have a front row seat every week. We'll just come and run your barn. What do I make? Well, nothing. You get a front row seat. We're giving you a pick of the litter. So.
Yeah. Angelo would try to figure out some way to get the guy to hand him some money too. Not being facetious there.
Well,
but
it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the place probably was, it probably wasn't very expensive, which was smart. I mean, Angelo watched money, and he liked to watch it coming in. He hated watching it go out. In fact, he grew blind when it was time for to hand it out. But
I'm sorry. I thought that was a 50. Oh, it was only a 5.
Yeah. When it was coming in, he could tell you the date on a penny from 10 feet away. He was different. But no, I'm sorry that I don't have a memory of
blocked it out.
Quite frankly, I hate the expression, but yeah, seriously, I hate that one too. I have blocked out a lot of stuff. And the reason why is because some of the memories are stressful. And I've been trying to, I mentioned earlier that my health is finally, I'm back to being the Bob Roop that I'm used to being. I've been used to being all but about 2 years of my life of feeling strong for my age, for my age and condition of feeling like Bob Roop.
I'm happy to be here for it. Yes.
Well, when you get sick and you're weak and you can't, if you're walking 10 feet, it blows you up. You're tired. If that hasn't ever happened to you before, you're not sure you're going to come back from it because you don't know.
Right.
Well, I have come back from it, and I can't tell you how happy it makes me. Life. You and I have talked about things like expenses and things, but having our children to love and the things in life that are good that we can focus on, and hopefully not be focusing on all the negative crap, and don't bring it into your life. And life can be good. Why not look for I always felt like the one thing I should be able to control is my own mood. Now, of course, if somebody's got a corkscrew around my big toenail, my mood might be distracted somewhat. But if I'm my own, losing the cane the other day, out 2 hours, I was just almost seriously depressed. And so I started thinking about it. Wait a minute. You're the one being depressed. You're the one that can get rid of it. Think of some way to start looking for a sunny side. So it didn't take but about 15 seconds. Hey, it might be fun to make another one. So anyway, working with ICW was a very unique experience.
I would say so.
And one thing, it would be like if you had a gorgeous show on Broadway with all the costumes and the beautiful makeup, on everybody's gorgeous or whatever they're supposed to be. They're menacing or very realistic. It looks like $1 million production. And then the show's over and everybody leaves and they pull the curtains back all the way and you see all behind that, all that mechanism. There's nothing beautiful about that at all. There's a bunch of crap thrown around, costumes and stuff that were changed in 10 seconds and dropped on the way back to the stage. And, it's just like it's not glamorous like was on that stage at all. And that's kind of what the wrestling business is like. What people got to see on TV and all that. If it's on TV, of course it's important. Of course you're famous. Of course you're important. The fact that you might be like Lord Norman Smiley,
right,
wrestling in Mexico, you might be in a dressing room where you have to stand on the benches to change clothes because there's 6 inches of urine on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real glamorous, right?
Yeah, it's the glamorous world of professional wrestling. I can't tell you how many times I've seen not scenarios like that there, talking about that particular situation there in Mexico, but yeah, I've seen things, and if the fans only knew sometimes what was going on behind that curtain, right? So the boys could even get changed or things of that nature. It's kind of fun, but you put on the show and it's a different world out there in front of the fans. And that takes us to the next question, an incident that did happen in front of fans in Tampa, if I remember correctly. And you told this story to some degree way back in one of the very first episodes of the Wrestling Stoop. But Rob Russo apparently wants to hear it again here, or at least maybe in some sort of a different detail. He says he has recently heard mention, I don't know if it was here on our podcast or somewhere else, of an incident that you had in the ring with I'm sorry, I'm already laughing, with a wrestler by the name of Killer Karl Krupp. And he was wondering if you could expound upon that here for us today on the program in regards to, I believe it was some sort of a tag match there you had when Harley was booking, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
In Tampa, 1975, I do believe. Bob, I'll let you take the stage. You can tell the story once again.
Oh, why isn't that memory in Saturn torturing those people out there? Oh, my God. It was a tag match, and Cyclone Negro was one of the opponents.
I think it was Rocky and Cyclone, I believe.
With Rocky and Cyclone against me and Krupp, I believe. Am I correct?
I believe that's how it went, yeah.
Yeah, I know I was a heel, and because I had the red, white, and blue.
Yeah, Rob had it here. I think he thought it was a singles match between you and Krupp, but it was definitely a tag match, and you guys were definitely the heels, yes.
Yes, and if Krupp was supposed to be on the far side of the ring for his part of the finish, he would be on the other side. If he was supposed to be laid down for a move, he would be standing up. If he was supposed to be nowhere near the ropes, he'd be tied up in them. It looked like somebody who deliberately went out there and said, I'm going to do everything exactly the opposite of what I was told to do. It was so screwed up, and Cyclone and I were looking at each other, both of us with raised eyebrows about how, Cyclone, pretty savvy, he was a genius in the ring. We're looking at how can we save this damn thing? And we couldn't. It was it was terrible. I mean, it wasn't an expose of the business, but what it was designed to do, to get heat or stature or whatever on somebody, didn't get anything but dog crap on everybody. I mean, we didn't look inept, but we didn't tell a story at all.
Right.
We didn't. We just, I mean, people would have to, if it was taped, you'd watch it with no sound, you'd watch it and go, what the fuck was that?
Well, that was, that's the thing going back that far. A, you guys were in there to tell a story. It wasn't just taking turns doing moves, but B, you guys were all professionals. And Bob, you'd had 6 years in the business at that point, so you even knew pretty well what to do in there. And this was in an era where you guys read the crowd and worked based on how the crowd was responding, and you could pivot if you needed to in the middle of the match. This wasn't today where everybody scripts out every move and, oh my God, I'm lost because we're not in the spot we need to be in. These were 4 professionals, or at least 3.5 professionals, that should typically know how to do what they need to do in there. But when you guys are given a finish, you need to follow that finish is basically where we go with the story. And before I let you, continue on with yours, I found from many years ago, you had made a post on Facebook talking about this situation. And I just want to read just a couple sentences you wrote about it here. It says, "It was a legendary clusterfuck. By comparison, making the Keystone Cops farce seem like the Bolshoi Ballet performing Swan Lake. A match far worse than anything I had ever seen or heard of." And I just love that. I just wanted to go to that real
Well, I might be able to come up with a few words. Let me think. Leper, a few words that are worse than that review, but that pretty well says it.
I believe that was the match that may have coined the term drizzling shits, perhaps.
Yes.
Okay.
If it didn't coin it, it earned the current, believe me, it had to earn the current award for that entire year.
It's in the high water mark. Gotcha.
In the universe. I don't care if they got wrestling on 1,000,000 planets. This had to be the worst. Well, but the thing that was, I was assistant booker. And all that meant was that I could, I knew what we were supposed to do, and I could tell guys to do things in the ring, and it came like, it meant more than if I was just another one of the boys, like trying to have things my way. If I was telling them to do things in the ring, they knew that it was to make the match better, that was for the match. And so there was no way to, even when I tried to tell Krupp what to do, he didn't have a clue. It was like he was deaf. But it was walking back up in the dressing room. I was leading. I didn't want to be behind anybody. I wanted to get away from. I thought maybe Krupp had some kind of intellectual leprosy. I wanted to get as far away from him as I could, and so I'm walking ahead. And as we go in the dressing room, he says, "Good match, huh?" And he was serious. Oh my God! Harley was walking across from the far side of a fairly big, I'd say a 20 by 15 room. He was walking from his locker over that side. He was come over. He wanted to talk to Krupp about, needing a brain transplant or whatever. But I picked up one of these wooden chairs, the old kind with you sit down and it's got a little tray. Right. It's all attached. It's all one piece.
Right.
Well, I had a bunch of old wooden ones there. I picked it up. And I think I smashed it against the wall. It might have been the floor. But Harley was coming to chew Krupp a new one. And when I did that, he was so tickled. He was so tickled about it. He had to turn around and cover his face to keep from laughing out loud. He was so tickled at my reaction. And he told me later about doing things like pulling sinks off the wall in bathrooms when he was pissed off. I mean, pulling the sink completely off the wall, wow. Breaking the pipes and everything else. So, I mean, he could identify with the way I was feeling. But, yeah, good match, huh? It's like, what do you say? I don't know even if a brain transplant's going to help this guy. I mean, what can you possibly say to that? So in fact, I never did ask Carly what he did say to him. Krupp had a real hard time getting figured in to any kind of angle of it that didn't involve a broom and, a mop because, he just, worst match I was ever in.
Gotcha.
By far, although there were a few stinkers. Yeah, the fact that I tell you what made it the worst was that Rocky was good, but Rocky had been used to being a babyface, but Cyclone had been a heel a lot of his career. So and even though he was working as a babyface, so I mean we had 2.5 guys out there that should have been able to save it somehow, and we couldn't between us. It just, of course, it would have been easier to grab a hold, tell Cyclone to grab a hold on the front face lock on Krupp and take him down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd get over there and be trying to pull him off, and I'd be talking. I could talk to Krupp and say, hey, find your brain. You're supposed to do. Anyway, we couldn't save it. And I guess thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. And, and there were a lot of really good matches, too, to remember.
Oh, certainly, man. We've covered a lot of them just from that period, that 75, 76 Florida era. But I got to say this much for Karl Krupp, of course, doing the German gimmick there. He had been in the business nearly 15 years by that point when that happened. So that's really odd. I don't know if he was having an off night. I don't know if he got a hold of some of the Chris Colt goodies. I don't know what the story may have been there that night with you guys, but this is all I do know. And for as fun as a character as he was, and his German character was over the top. I don't know if it was in the mid 70s, but later on he would play it to the hilt. It was almost like you thought that he was stuck in time, but he wasn't playing the heel German, the evil Nazi German. He was playing a caricature of the Nazi German. So it was almost like a comedy German character later on in the 1980s. And from my understanding, he was one of those guys who was the gimmick was, I don't know if he came up with it or somebody gave it to him, but it got over to some degree in certain territories, but he wasn't a big fan of it. I don't know if he had been of Jewish descent. I don't know. I think that was the story or something like that. So that's the irony in the whole thing. He wasn't a big fan of Nazis. I don't know that anybody is, but Germany and et cetera, but he had worked that gimmick. And so he made it over the top, at least in certain places, in certain eras, because he was kind of mocking the Germans or the Nazis and whatnot. But any of the footage out there of him, most of it comes from the early to maybe the mid 1980s. And you can imagine as he gets up there in age, it's not any prettier. So it's not very fun to watch Killer Karl Krupp on tape is what I'm trying to say. But I gotta go try to locate a little more of his 1970s stuff if it's out there and see if that was just a one-off, with you guys, or if that was just, how did he keep a job for 25 years?
Well, you know what? I don't remember any of his matches. So if he had been having disasters, I would remember them. I
can't see Eddie Graham keeping him in the territory if he's doing this every night.
No, well, I was assistant booker. I would, if he was stinking up the place, you got to get rid of him. Now, I wanted to ask you, you said he became a caricature. Are we talking Hogan's Hero, Sergeant Schultz, or something?
Well, that might have been where he got the idea from. It's possible.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if it was to that level. I always wondered why those guys spoke perfect English, though, and why they spoke in English.
Well, they weren't really heels because it was meant to be a comedy,
right?
And they were, they were really. The Nazis were evil as can be.
Right.
But to make a comedy out of them, people have short memories. There's a lot of people don't have an idea what Vietnam was. And that's the way it works. I've forgotten a lot about my service time. Fortunately, I never had to be in combat. Anybody that thinks that makes me a coward. Yeah, the idea of being killed is bad enough, but the idea of me killing other people, I'll defend my home, and if it comes to it, I'll do what's necessary. But for a war about making people money, basically. I'm really, I know I choose not to kill anybody or be killed, and if that makes me a coward, then I accept it. But even at 83, we can still step behind the barracks, if you really want to.
Well, that's good to know. Good to know. I'll be looking for you when the shit goes down here sooner or later. But we're gonna continue on. Listener Jay writes in and asks, "Do you have any memories, or were you ever involved in any matches, or he says storylines, or just outside the ring behavior with Dick Steinborn?"
Not much, a little bit. Dickie, he was a great hand in the ring. But he had a bad rap for some reason. I don't even know why. He should have been able to be. He really was a good guy, good wrestler in the ring, and he was nice looking. And he, I don't remember him interviewing. Maybe there was some reason. Eddie Graham, Milo Steinborn, his father was the promoter in Orlando.
Right.
Ran the town, the wrestling show in Orlando. I don't know. I worked with Dick when I was very green in the business, and he led me through a very good match. But he just, I don't know. He just, it was nobody's really said anything bad about him, but nobody ever said anything really good about him either.
Okay.
It was kind of let's move on. Well, I do know one story.
Okay.
There was a rookie in the business who went on a trip to Australia, and he was green, and he was young, and he met one of the girls over there who was one of the girls. She had been with, a few,
sure,
at least a few of the boys. Well, this kid, it was his first, Australian, for an Australian girl, their man's idea of a date was that he would drive by and pick him up after work. He hadn't gone home and changed his clothes or anything. And they would go to the bar, and she would get one beer and go sit at a table, and he would sit there and drink beers with his boys for 4 or 5 hours. Then he'd take her home and, to be frank, expect sex and drop her off. And that was a date for Australia. And I heard this from several different Australian women. So marrying an American wrestler was a major goal. If you could marry an American wrestler who would take you back to America with you, that was like winning an Oscar. So anyway, this girl was obviously attractive and came on to him, and he fell in love with her. Say 8 months later, he's been communicating with her. He comes back to Australia, and Dick Steinborn knew about this situation. The kid came back, and Steinborn arranged for the kid to come up to his room. And the kid came up to his room, and when he got in there, Steinborn's in bed with the girl this kid loves. And Dickie did that on purpose. So,
well, I can see why he wasn't held in high regard. That can't be the first time. I'm not saying he did that exact same thing. Obviously, if he's capable of doing these things intentionally, I could see why some other situations may have come up in his lifetime that didn't make him one of the favorites of some of the other boys.
Well, there were certain of the boys. There's a lot of strange people in the wrestling business, and there were certain of the boys would think that was a great rib.
Right.
Because the guy that was in love, he was a mark. He was he was an idiot. You can't trust. The guys that were very promiscuous. A lot of times they were suspicious of their own wives because they knew they couldn't trust themselves, and they weren't sure they could trust their wives either. And you can be your own worst enemy. Not everybody. I mean, there were a lot of decent people who were loyal to their families in the business, but there were a lot who weren't. And that's not something that, that's not something that I don't know how you can be proud of it. I don't know. I wouldn't be.
No, I mean, that's life of the rock star, though, or, things of that nature is basically what it is. It's a lot of guys didn't want to have to settle down completely. They like knowing they had their wife at home, but I understand. I know the stories. We talked a little bit about some of them in the past, so I kind of get the idea of, I mean, that's just came with the territory, unfortunately, for a lot of the guys. Not all of them, but I would say the vast majority, honestly, Bob, from the stories I've heard anyway.
I'll trot out one I already told, but I'll make it quick this time.
Sure.
I got to sit in with the girls one night in Melbourne. Yeah. Remember that story?
Yep.
Oh, what they said about the boys.
And it was the girls that were working the boys, and the boys thought they were working the girls, right? Yeah. So it was like trading cards, but with actual men, basically. It's like, well, I got a so-and-so. Well,
the guy said, well, I got this kind of sex, maybe whatever. But the girl got a big mark on her grade book if she got one of the top guys. If she got him on a regular basis, oh my God, she's queen for a day every time. So the guys were just thanks to these girls. I find it ironic because some of the guys would brag, and they really didn't. Like, oh, I've got her, boy, but I got her snowed or some stuff like that. And I'm thinking, oh, man, it's just a snow. Well, I heard about you. Oh, geez. That's irony, I think, to be able to sit in with the girls. I mean, and that experience with Chris Colt, being in his environment, you talk about a way to learn about, how different people live and think and act. What great life lessons. We talk about street smarts. I didn't have many street smarts when I got in the business because I'd always been protected. I'd been in high school or college and in the service. I'd never, when I was out on my own, within 6 months, I had to go in the service because I couldn't get a job to support myself. I could have, I just didn't know how. Anyway, these girls, they didn't consider themselves being had at all. They had scored big with, and when girls that could go back and talk. There were old timers there who go back and talk about wrestlers who were dead but who had been big stars. And how do you? Man. There's no way that you can top them, if they had Gorgeous George or. So what
you're saying is there were second generation wrestlers, but there were also second generation rats. Apparently.
Oh yes. Oh,
my mommy had Hackenschmidt back in 1905 and Fez in 42, and okay.
yeah, and we're just making those names up there, not
right? Yeah, no,
those aren't wrestling names at all. No.
No.
I was talking.
I'm not implying that George Hackenschmidt. I would not know that 120 years ago what George Hackenschmidt was or was not doing, but I just wanted to throw those names out there because those might be names that people would recognize. So just to be clear, I have no idea what George Hackenschmidt's sex life was like.
Well, I was talking about Gorgeous George Hackenschnabel, so nobody knows him. It doesn't matter what he did over there. So anyway,
I'm not familiar with him. I'm going to have to go look into that guy. Oh man! Well, it was a fun trip this week, Bob. I really appreciate you taking us back and answering a few more questions, taking us back to your Army days. That was cool, and some fun times in Alaska. And we even learned how Bob got to Alaska. So if anybody ever wants a free trip to Alaska, just enlist in the armed forces and threaten to shoot fight with your fucking whoever's above you there, whatever the case may be. Anybody apparently, because Bob was still agreeing to the whole Army deal, and he's already offering to give somebody a wrestling lesson, if you will. Let's just take this outside, Sarge.
Right. Get caught with the wife of the guy that does all the transfers on the base.
Well, that'll work too. Yeah.
If you want to get far away, say you want to get as far away from where you're at as you can, that'd be another good way.
There or 3 Mile Island, they might. I don't know where they would put you at that point.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up another week here on the Stoop. We, Bob, we've talked about this in the past. You sent me all of the global footage. I've converted it all so that we have it available to us to do whatever we feel like doing, whether we go and watch a couple of matches on the video or we just discuss some of it here on the program in the weeks to come. So that is getting situated for everybody curious and interested in that time frame. Also, we're working on getting Bob's deal maybe to distribute these videos through someone or something. So we've got a lot of that going on, but we also have bobroop.com, still a work in progress, but it's getting there. And I'm looking forward to Bob maybe writing a few little blogs there from time to time. He's back doing his anecdotes on Facebook. I'll let you guys know that much. So you guys can find him there at facebook.com/PoorBobRoop. Of course, that's also Poor Bob Roop backwards, if I remember correctly. So
yes,
pretty easy to remember that way.
It fits and it remembers. Yeah. I finally got back to a feeling. I lost my sense of humor and from political crap. So I finally found it again, and I'm trying to. I amuse myself. My philosophy is, as long as someone's laughing, I mean, it makes it worthwhile.
Sure.
A lot of people say, well, that's so horrible. It is amusing that you would think that that's funny. I can laugh at you. So, well, okay, we're both laughing now. I enjoy expressing myself, and I want to thank everyone out there for being part of allowing me to do so. Ray, of course, you have my blessing and eternal thanks for making this possible, and my best wishes and hopes for everyone. May your days be filled with peace and happiness and good health.